For this week's video, I wanted to talk about a topic that beginners in cloud computing would be interested in. That is, understanding and figuring out the answer for an AWS certification exam question. This is not the hottest topic out there at the moment to talk about, but with the level of false information available for people who are looking for this kind of details, I felt this would be a useful video to make. Now first, someone could ask why a beginner in cloud computing would be worried about certifications. Why? After all, ancient wisdom had always said that certification should be done to prove your existing practical knowledge, and they should not be based on studying books. But while there is some truth to that saying, if you look at it in a purest sense, we can't deny that studying for an exam and completing it provides someone with more knowledge than they started with. Also, certifications like AWS Cloud Practitioner are specifically designed towards beginners as a stepping stone to get into the domain. You're supposed to start with no prior knowledge in the area. And lastly, I think most people that recite this ancient wisdom phrase, not all of them are a little bit full of themselves anyways. I think it's coming from a place with a lot of elitism, ego, and a little bit of jealousy.
I have an IQ of 146. I can absorb the world as I see it.
Irrespective of what they think, I think certifications help. They help leveling you up, they help getting a foot in the door when you're trying to interview for a position, and they help giving you an understanding of what is usually expected from you in certain roles in general. Job descriptions change based on different companies, but there is a common definition for all of these roles that you would probably be working on in cloud computing. So there's obviously demand for beginner-friendly material out there, and naturally, there is a lot of supply. But not all of the supply is of equal quality. While some material you can find are good quality stuff produced by people with experience in tech and teaching, both are important in this case, there's a lot of material that are just not up to quality. This is what I wanted to talk about today while going through a question for AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. And that's also a certification that beginners can start to look at after you do something like AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner. No one that is serious about learning tries to gatekeep you from doing these certifications. If you feel like you can do them, study and go for them. And last disclaimer before I get into the meat and the potatoes of this video, what I'm going to do is to go through a single question, go through the answers, point out how the originally marked answer is wrong, and constructively criticize some of the discussions that has happened around it. What I'm not going to do is to disparage newcomers into the industry, criticize individuals, or make fun of people for not knowing stuff. I like seeing people switching to my domain. None of this elitist bullshit. I think people from different backgrounds add to this industry, especially in areas and domains that are, you can say, have a limited intellectual gene pool. I also try to criticize the ideas as much as possible in a respectful manner, not the individuals involved in this case. And lastly, to be honest, I don't know a lot of stuff in larger computer science as well. When it comes down to it, I know and have experience in a narrow field of a larger practice. So making fun of not knowing stuff is going to work against my favor anyways. If anything I say sounds disparaging to you as a newcomer, please know that it's unintentional. I have the best intentions when I try to provide some critique to this discussion, and feel free to let me know if that is coming across as offensive. Alright, let's get into this question. This question is a practice question out of a bundle that is available on the internet. It is a bit unclear in the wording of the question, as most of the questions in third-party practice bundles that you can find. From my experience in the past, AWS question pool mostly has better worded, clear questions, but we can use this question to level up our knowledge anyways. So I'm going to read the question first, understand the requirements, then I'm going to glance through the answers and then evaluate different answers one by one. After evaluating the answers, I'm going to decide which answer is the correct one based on the requirements that I gathered from the question. So the question here is, a company's containerized application runs on an Amazon EC2 instance. The application needs to download security certificates before it can communicate with other business applications. The company wants a highly secure solution to encrypt and decrypt the certificates in near real time. The solution also needs to store data in highly available storage after the data is encrypted. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational overhead? Answer A. Create AWS Secrets Managed Secrets for encrypted certificates. Manually update the certificates as needed. Control access to the data by using fine-grained IAM access. Answer B. Create an AWS Lambda function that uses the Python cryptography library to receive and perform encryption operations. Store the function in an Amazon S3 bucket. Create an AWS key management service, customer managed key. Allow the EC2 role to use the KMS key for encryption operations. Store the encrypted data on Amazon S3. Answer D. Create an AWS key management service, customer managed key. Allow the EC2 role to use the KMS key for encryption operation. Store the encrypted data on Amazon Elastic Block Store volumes. Now, before we go into the answers, it's important for us to understand what the actual requirements are. Now remember, this is a question for AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. As a solution architect, you're supposed to understand requirements from what the clients give you as their requirements, understand the true functional and non-functional requirements, and design your solution to meet those requirements. So our first job here is to understand what the question has in terms of functional and non-functional requirements. A company's containerized application runs on an EC2 instance. That's good information, but that doesn't really say what the requirement is. Application needs to download security certificates before it can communicate with other business applications. Now this is a place where you should start thinking about things like TLS, Transport Layer Security, and Mutual TLS. If you know about these terms, if you know how these concepts are used, you will understand that this is a common scenario that you would probably work with. If you don't know what TLS and Mutual TLS are, this is a good place to stop and go and study what those are. It is important to understand what TLS is and security in general for web architectures before we can consider anything related to solution architecture. These are fundamentals that anyone in the domain is expected to have. In brief, TLS is a way to enable encryption in transit, and that is usually implemented as a server verifying that it is what it says it is. Mutual TLS, also known as MTLS or client-side authentication, the client also has to prove that it is what it says it is. MTLS is usually used to limit who can talk to a certain service as a way of authentication and sometimes even authorization. Both of these cases are implemented as a digital certificate that is trusted by a third party. So usually when you're browsing something on the internet, these trusted parties are maintained by the browser or the operating system itself. But in certain application designs, there is no central list of trusted certificates. So sometimes you have to manually trust other services or manually get trusted services to talk to different APIs or different services. So this is a scenario like that. So with this knowledge, let's go to the next sentence and understand the other requirements. The company wants a highly secure solution to encrypt and decrypt certificates in near real time. Now this phrase in near real time could be one of those things that can throw you off if you focus on it too much. Of course, this is to say that you shouldn't use any solution that takes hours or days to retrieve the decrypted material from the encrypted store. The solution also needs to store data in highly available storage after this data is encrypted. Now you will see later that if you focus too much on this highly available storage aspect, and if you don't know enough about the other services, you can go down on wrong approaches by just focusing on the wrong words in this question. So the final sentence is, which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational overhead? Usually in AWS questions, this is kind of the sentence that defines that limiting factor that usually is the differentiator between two similar answers. So with this, let's go and analyze each answer. Now, first one is create AWS Secrets Manager secrets for encrypted certificates. That's a good option. Secrets Manager is a fully managed service by AWS, and its main business offering, the main business differentiator, is to store sensitive material in a compliant way. And Secrets Manager has an SLA of 99.99% of monthly uptime. If you don't know what an SLA is, a service level agreement, make this a point to go and study what SLAs are, and also go and study SLAs for a couple of critical AWS services. You don't really have to keep the numbers in mind, you don't have to remember them for the exam, but it's important that you understand what service level agreements are and how those define what availability is for certain AWS services. So the next sentence in this answer is manually update the certificates as needed. Now, this sentence, as we'll see down the line, actually throws a lot of people off because of the word manually. That's because a lot of these sources that tries to provide beginner-friendly material tries to recommend pattern matching as a good way to get through some of these exams. Now, don't get me wrong, pattern matching and figuring out answers by that approach could be useful in certain situations, and I think pattern matching is a good way to get through an exam like AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner, because that can help you validate your knowledge, and also sometimes it can also help you build new connections between the isolated pockets of knowledge you have in your brain. So there are situations that pattern matching could help you. But remember, this is a question for AWS Certified Solutions Architect, and at this point, if you try to do pattern matching, that's going to fail you fast. So if we consider the term manually update the certificates here, that is kind of a misleading phrase, because when you create an AWS Secrets Manager secret, you have to add the sensitive material manually to the secret anyways. You could add this through the API, you could add this through an automated solution, but at its core, what you're doing is to manually update the secret with a secret material. So there is no way around this being a manual operation. So this is why I call this a little bit misleading, because certificates and keys are the kind of information, kind of sensitive information that don't get updated that frequently. There is no automation for this step if you really think about it. So in the discussion for this question, a lot of folks had dismissed this answer outright because it has the word manually. So don't do that because of two reasons. One, don't ever decide on the correct answer just by reading just one answer, or don't dismiss any answer outright without going through all the answers. Two, it's wrong. Don't pattern match manually with least operational overhead. The use of that word can throw you off. Another kind of a hidden detail in this answer is, if you have ever created a Secrets Manager secret, you will know that you have to provide a KMS key to encrypt and decrypt that secret anyways. This can be the built-in AWS managed KMS key, or this can be a customer managed KMS key. In any case, you are going to use KMS when you use Secrets Manager itself. So just because this answer doesn't mention KMS keys doesn't mean KMS is not involved. So this is why you have to know about different services and how they are implemented and which business offerings they offer when you sit for an exam like AWS Certified Solutions Architect. The final part of the answer is control access to the data by using fine-grained IAM access. This is also a good practice. This doesn't specify if this is identity-based policies or resource-based policies, but in any case, that's a good way to maintain control over sensitive material in your cloud architecture. So this is a good answer. I'm going to mark it as the probable candidate. Answer B. Create an AWS Lambda function that uses Python cryptography library to receive and perform encryption operations. Well, that's a way to do it. That's not the best way to do it because of the operational overhead aspect that we have as a requirement. You can create Lambda functions, but remember there is a lot of unexpected overhead involved in writing code, maintaining it, building and maintaining CI/CD pipelines, and just generally maintaining the security of that code. And also the second part of this answer, store the function in an Amazon S3 bucket. Well, yeah, you usually store the function distribution in an Amazon S3 bucket, but it doesn't really address our requirement to store the actual secret in highly available secure storage. So this is not a good answer. I'm going to mark it as something that might not be the best answer. So answer C, create an AWS KMS key. That's a good approach. KMS key is good. Allow the instance profile to access it. That's also good. And store the encrypted data in Amazon S3. Well, that can work, to be honest. You can store sensitive data on Amazon S3 if you encrypt it properly. But at the same time, we should consider this in the context of all the answers that are provided. Now we already have an answer that mentions the use of Secrets Manager. We can't find any issues on that design. So instead of using S3, I can directly use Secrets Manager because that's the exact offering that Secrets Manager provides, maintaining secret values. I can use S3 as a place to store sensitive data, but I have to enable a lot of different features, a lot of different settings to make sure that I'm compliant on things that I have to do when it comes to storing sensitive material. It's like using a trowel to dig a post hole instead of using an auger. Yeah, you can technically get the same output, but you'll be digging for a lot more time than just using an auger, which is built for that specific reason. So this is another answer that could be on the fence, but compared to the answer that I already have, answer A, I'm going to mark this, or I'm going to rate this answer below answer A. And let's go to answer D. It's the same thing as answer C, but instead of storing the secret in Amazon S3, it's going to store the secret on Amazon EBS. This is worse than actually storing it on S3. Like I said before, yes, EBS is a storage service. You can technically use it to store sensitive material, but it won't be as compliant as using Secrets Manager. Also, just keep in mind that anything that you store on the disk could be readable by any other process that runs on the instance. So it is not the greatest when it comes to encryption at rest and a secure way of accessing the secret material. So I'm going to rate it below answer C. So based on this rating, I'm going to go for answer A, and that is actually the correct answer here because I have implemented this pattern for this specific case several times in real life for different projects. But if we go and check the suggested answer, the original creator of this question suggests that the correct answer is D. In my book, this is the third correct answer, or the second worst answer, if you however you look at it. But there is something more interesting. There is a community discussion feature on this site as well. So if we go down to that discussion, the community has discussed and most voted on answer C. Now the reasons for this is interesting, and it also gives us insight and maybe more knowledge on how to tackle questions like this. In addition to this, I also saw someone who was working at AWS who's not actually working on the technical stack, but they were managing or mentoring a beginner training community. They also seem to go for C because of the same reasons that this community had discussed, and has gone for option C as well. So let's see what those reasons are. The number one reason they had gone for option C was that it has mentioned KMS key, and second reason is it has mentioned Amazon S3, and Amazon S3 is marketed as a highly available storage solution. Now if you look at it that way, with only answer C and without any of the other answers in the context, yes, it could make sense, and especially it could make sense if you don't have enough experience on the real world. And by real world, I mean building solutions for real use cases, real customer requirements. We should keep in mind that there is context to this question. There are other answers, and there's an answer that provides secrets manager secrets as the option. And it has no issues. That answer's design has no issues. And as a solution architect or an aspiring solution architect, you should be able to understand that secrets manager's offering is what's exactly this scenario is looking for. It doesn't matter that Amazon S3 is this highly available storage service. It's not that great at handling sensitive material. If you open the bucket to public by mistake, and it's easy to do, you open your sensitive material for public read. If you enable versioning for your bucket and you then later open your bucket for public reads, then again you expose your secrets. Secrets Manager does not allow you to do that. Its base service is to store and provide access to sensitive material based on policies or secret policies, or you can even use IAM policies to control access. So this is why it's important to understand different differentiating offerings in Amazon services or AWS services. These services do have a certain overlap for various legitimate reasons, but as a solution architect, you should be able to understand the correct service for the correct use case. There was a discussion point raised in the community somewhere. It mentions answer A, and it correctly identifies that it is a highly available secrets management solution that can be used. Unfortunately, this hasn't got any attention, and the only response to it is interesting because it says least operational overhead and manually usually don't go together. So this is that pattern matching thinking that I mentioned before. You can't go with that approach of pattern matching and guessing answers. AWS doesn't punish you for guessing, but any guess that you make have to be educated guesses as well. So what are the lessons that we can learn from analyzing this question and the discussion? First, use that pattern that I used to read and understand the question and the answers. That has always worked for me. It might take some time to get it right and get it to a reasonable pace, but it helps to practice when you're doing these practice exams. So read the question, identify the key requirements in the question, glance through all the answers, and then read and analyze all the answers one by one, and rate these answers based on the likelihood of them being the correct answer. And finally, tally the count and decide what the correct answer or the answers are. Second lesson here is identifying the question and the requirements needs its own set of skills and knowledge. So the more you know about general IT systems and scenarios, the better, and you can develop your knowledge by doing practice exams and then studying and then identifying the gaps and then studying for those gaps. Third lesson is not to go for pattern matching. I mentioned this a couple of times. This is going to fail you fast and take you down roads that do not make any sense at all in the real world. Fourth lesson, always be ready to identify services by their main offerings, main differentiating offerings. AWS services have this overlap, I know, but study these services enough so that you can identify their main business offering. Fifth lesson, do not hang on the wrong words. Now you saw that in this question, if you focus too much on the requirements like near real time or highly available storage, or even things like encrypt and decrypt, you might go down the wrong approach or wrong analysis if you don't have enough real world experience. And if you're a beginner in this domain, it's likely that you don't have enough experience. So practicing using these questions and then studying different services, again, it's the only way to get through exams like this. Sixth lesson is a little bit cynical. Do not trust online sources outright, and in fact do not sometimes even trust the input you get from experienced engineers as well. Now, people make mistakes, and also even experienced engineers, they can be a little bit behind than the latest development. And when you're in a group, if the group is wrong, the group can be wrong in force. You might feel left out, but do your own research. I'm going to sound a little bit paranoid here, but do your own research when it comes to these services. Read the documentation, understand these scenarios, understand the general system architecture. That's the only way to get these things right. Seventh and the final lesson is read all the answers before settling down on the correct one. Even if you're 100% sure that the first answer you read is the correct answer, don't mark it as correct and move on to the next question. Read all the answers anyways. I have been saved multiple times by just following this, because I was sure that I got the correct answer, and then down the line there's a similar answer with a little bit of detail changed, and it turns out I read the question wrong. So it helps reading all of the information that you have in the question and the answers correctly. It can also help establishing that context to understand the limits and parameters of things like non-functional requirements. For an example here, least operational overhead could be defined in different ways if we didn't have enough context. But since we read all the answers, we know that there is the option of using Secrets Manager, and then there is the option of using S3. And out of these two, using S3 is the most operational overhead option. Alright, so I hope this is useful, and I hope you were able to learn something as a beginner. If this video did help you, please like and subscribe if you haven't. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.